Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. Now I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Ooh, it's Friday morning. That means there's only one thing the old Seaman could possibly be talking about right now. Oh, we're getting ready to dive back in to the Star Wars television universe and into everyone's new favorite TV show on Disney Plus. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, man? Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into the Mandalorian Chapter 5, The Gunslinger. I'm not gonna lie to you, I saw that title come up and I was like, oh man, Dark Top, Roland Deschain, Stephen King universes? What are we crossing things over? We're not crossing anything over. However, when I see the Gunslinger, the first thing I always immediately think of is Roland Deschain in the first book in the Dark Tower series, which is titled The Gunslinger. Now, there is a mysterious character that shows up toward the end of the episode that I suppose could be Roland Deschain, but I don't think that's very likely. What we do get is not any kind of a Dark Tower universe thing. We get a lot of Star Wars universe stuff in this episode. Maybe the most fan service I've seen in any episode thus far, which could be a good or a bad thing, depending on what you're looking for in your Mandalorian episodes. However, if you hear fan service and you know that Dave Filoni not only is directing here, but writing, you can guarantee that you are going to geek out hard in these fan service moments, and that's exactly what I did. I must have counted like 7 or 8, like just right off the cuff, like either visually, character-based, lines, or things that are being referenced. You're just like, oh, I know that. Oh, what? Ah, he, who? Lot of noises will come out of your mouth, most likely in an excited tone, because we get to see a lot of wonderful things that as a Star Wars fan, you're like, yes, give me that, give me more of that, give me, oh yes, so many nice things in this episode, and Dave Filoni does a very, very good job with them. And I think Dave Filoni did a good job directing this episode. It's the second episode of the season, and it's very cinematic feeling, man. The opening sequence, it's one of these things where after we get through that Star Wars, opening title card, usually we're hearing before we're seeing, right? Like as the Star Wars logo fades off, it's black for a moment, and we start hearing what's going on, and then we get thrown into it. And we get thrown into it hard here, man. Like you get tossed into, like you hear the noise, and you're like, wait, what? Uh-oh. And then you're just in it, man. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's go. And it's something we haven't seen yet in The Mandalorian, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. It was something immediately I was like, oh, I wish that was on the big screen. And Filoni gives us a couple moments like that. There's, much, considering that the title is The Gunslinger, there are a lot of the Western presence in this episode, man. You get some wonderful landscape and establishing shots. One of the moments or a couple different times we got to see the Mandalorian go from one place to another, and the way in which he gets there in this episode, visually, you're just like, oh, dude, on the big screen, that would look so good. And you get a lot of nice things like that from Filoni. So I think he does a fine job in directing the episode. If I was going to have any gripes with Filoni as far as writing goes, as he is the writer on this episode, the first episode that Jon Favreau has not written, it's not that the writing is bad. The writing is fine. And like I said, all the fan service stuff he builds in is wonderful. So many Easter eggs and little nods and callbacks to things in the Mandalorian and the Star Wars universe in general that you're just like, yes, I love that stuff. However, Filoni does not push the overall plot and story forward too much. It does advance things, a little bit, and it does confirm, other things that we've kind of started to see happen, and reinforces the fact that the Mandalorian is not safe as long as he's got Baby Yoda with him. Because he basically went against the guild's wishes, so he's a traitor in that sense. And then because he still has Baby Yoda, like John Wick style, he's got a lot of bounty hunters coming after him. And the episode does reinforce that stuff a lot, but it certainly felt like it was, hey, you know what, we're going to just tell you this one-off story that features the Mandalorian that's tied to the plot, but, like I said, doesn't really advance it, but, we're going to give you so many things that you're going to enjoy from a geeking out standpoint. So, depending on what you're looking for, you may love this episode or you may be lukewarm on this episode. And for me, being a Star Wars fan, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode because of all those callbacks. I geeked out a lot, man. Like I said, a lot of high octane noises coming out of my mouth. But I did want more from the story progression. It doesn't feel like we've moved too far from the end of chapter 4. That being said, though, we do get some wonderful stuff for the Mandalorian to do. And what's nice here is, and I guess you could say this is a mild spoiler, but if you've seen IMDb or even when you pull up Chapter 5 in Disney Plus, it gives you, the description of what the episode is. And in this one, the Mandalorian is kind of mentoring or working with a new bounty hunter. Someone who's trying to get into the guild, played by Jake Cannavale, Bobby Cannavale's son. I think he does a really, really nice job with the episode, and the back and forth with him and Mando sometimes is really, really, solid. I enjoyed watching what he was doing, and he looks so much like his dad. So as soon as it came up and I saw what the name was, I was like, yeah, because it was bothering me all episode that it looked like somebody I knew. But I digress. That the plot though is the Mandalorian kind of working with this kid who's a newbie, doesn't know too much, and he's kind of showing him the ropes. And what's neat about that aspect of the episode is more so than any other episode, we really kind of get to hear the internal monologue of the Mandalorian because he has to express things verbally out loud to this kid that doesn't really know too much about the bounty hunting game. And in that aspect, I really enjoyed the episode because you really get a good sense of how the Mandalorian's brain works when he's out on a hunt. And the cleverness to the things that he has to do to get his man or woman, whoever his bounty is. This episode, you get to see the things that go through his mind and who is my opponent? Who am I going up against? What's the best way for me to get this person? And the target in the episode is a highly skilled assassin. So the Mando's got, a legitimate combatant in front of him, and watching him try to teach this kid what to do so he doesn't die is interesting. And of course, obviously, the whole reason he's doing it is the Mando is in need of some cash when he gets to where he's getting to in this episode. But I thoroughly enjoyed watching the Mando kind of try to teach this kid some things because we kind of got the internal monologue of what goes through his head, and that stuff was really, really cool. And as always, Pedro Pascal's just crushing it, man. His voice work is so good, and like I said, there are just moments where he'll like tilt his head or do little things that you're just like, man, like it's so good. I could literally watch The Mandalorian do anything, which is why I don't dislike this episode, because I'm cool watching him do anything in the world of a space western, and we get a bunch of good stuff as far as what he's physically doing on screen that's enjoyable to watch. And don't worry, even though Mando's pairing with a newbie, and I did thoroughly enjoy Jake Cannavale's performance, Baby Yoda is still around. And what's nice with this one is, one of those things is the Mandalorian's got to figure out ways and places to kind of drop Baby Yoda off so he can go do things. And where he gets dropped off this episode, thoroughly enjoyable. We get to see the great comedian Amy Sedaris. You should be familiar with her from stand-up and voice work. And I mean, she's acting. Amy Sedaris has been everywhere. And she is thoroughly enjoyable in this episode. And she kind of gets to hang out with Baby Yoda. And that whole aspect of it is great. And like typical classic Baby Yoda, his appearance into the episodes is always enjoyable. And while he doesn't have a ton to do in this episode, especially after how much he had to do in chapter 4, he just crushes it in the cute. The animatronic work with him is so good, because like while sequences are going on, if you're paying attention to him, all of a sudden he's got like this little smile on his face or a little frown, and the way he coos or like reaches out or is just like so cute still. And I just love them. And now we got some real merch coming out, man. I pre-ordered 2 of the 11-inch plushes from Walmart that dropped the other day. And, the pop is on its way soon. I cannot get enough Baby Yoda. And I thoroughly enjoyed seeing him in the episode, and where he was being with Amy Sedaris. Anytime she is on screen, she's really, really enjoyable. So I thought it was a very enjoyable episode, albeit lacking in pushing the plot and story forward on the big scale. In the small scale, though, you got to give Filoni credit for all the fan service stuff in this episode. Maybe it's too much, and some people will be like, this really feels like a filler episode. And, you know, to a degree it does, but I think getting inside of the Mando's head and how he thinks and what he goes through his mind before he does things, I think is really, really interesting and makes it less of a filler. But, the fan service stuff is so good. I can't wait to talk spoilers on this one, because there's so many cool things that happen there in there. So for me, not I don't think it's one of the top episodes, but another very, very solid episode of The Mandalorian, and one that I enjoyed, and I certainly can't wait to see where we end up next week. So there you go, man. Those are all my non-spoiler thoughts. There will certainly be spoiler thoughts coming, hopefully this weekend, and I will also work on getting Chapter 4 up. I wanted to do that this past weekend, but with the holiday, I just kind of didn't have time to. So I promise the spoilers will keep coming. We'll get Chapter 4. We'll get this episode, Chapter 5. I've definitely got to talk spoilers because there's so many. Most of the talk would be spoilers, but we'll get those up. But now it is your turn, man. I want to know what you're thinking about The Mandalorian Chapter 5, The Gunslinger. Were you in on this episode? Were you geeking out hard? Did you wish the plot would have pushed things forward a little bit more? What was working and not working in this episode, considering it's the first that Favreau didn't write? Did you like what Dave Filoni was doing from a writing and a directing standpoint here? What was your favorite thing? Don't spoil anything. Just kind of mention it was the opening sequence. Oh, it was the end. And speaking of the end, we also get to see Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., longtime alum, Ming-Na Wen show up, and she's wonderful. And the way the episode ends, it does set up potential things. There are things put in place in this episode that could play out later that could have an impact on the show. So that's why I don't think it's filler. But any of that stuff, it was the end, it was the opening, it was some stuff going on in the middle. Let me know where in the episode you were liking things, if you were geeking out really hard, and if the episode didn't work, let me know that too. All of it can go down below in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking The Mandalorian, every Friday morning, we're here talking non-spoilers. You want to be in on that, I urge you to come join the Cinema Sitdown squad, kids, man. Jump over there, hit that little subscribe button. You'll be in the squad. I'll pop up in your feed, and you'll see anytime we're talking The Mandalorian or just anything. We're always talking movies and TV, and trailer reactions. And if, you want to be the first in the know, you really love the C-Man's Mandalorian coverage, hit that alert bell that follows, and then you'll get an alert right on your computer or your phone. That'll be boom, C-Man dropped a Mandalorian review, and get right in there, man. So you guys, if you feel compelled to, please go do that for me. I will continue to crank on the Mandalorian content over here, and until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I'm the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace! Well, you guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. C-Man's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the C-Man goodies, join the Cinema Sit Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.